You might know Hedy Lamarr's face from the infamous look that she had in the movie Ziegfeld Girl. And it was inspired by this Instagram filter that you might have seen, but I think should have been credited to her and should have been named after her. What else do you know about Hedy Lamarr? I am going to try to turn myself into the most beautiful woman in old Hollywood. We got a ways to go. So let me show you who I'm gonna try to turn myself into. Here's where the inspiration came from. Carla Valderrama has this book called This Was Hollywood. She has an Instagram account that I followed for a while, and then she came out with this book right before Christmas. I read it as fast as I could. It's so interesting. Just the stories behind some of our really well-known Hollywood stars, stories that you may not know, and then stories about stars that really made old Hollywood, but they themselves weren't very famous or didn't get the credit that they deserved. This is a really good book. I hope she comes out with a second edition because I got done reading it and I wanted more. So follow her on Instagram. I'll put her Instagram down in the description box, and I'll put a link to the book. She actually doesn't talk about the person that I'm going to recreate, but she has a picture, and that is of Hedy Lamarr. So she tells stories of stars, but then she'll have pictures of other stars included, just for interest and kind of a background on what Hollywood would have been like at different times. And so she has this picture of Hedy Lamarr. I didn't really know anything about Hedy Lamarr. I had read a couple of things because right now she's really kind of known as the woman who invented Wi-Fi. It wasn't Wi-Fi at the time, of course, but her technology made way for Wi-Fi and so much else, things that the military uses, which was her purpose in creating certain things. We will talk more about her later and what an interesting person she was, and really the intelligence and the boldness that she had, and also she had a pretty sad story. We'll get to her later. There's just so much about her. It says that she's Hedy Lamarr isn't afraid to get her hands dirty in her World War II victory garden. When I first saw this, I had a eye roll reaction to it, and I will get more into that later because I had to come around, and actually I felt pretty bad and I wanted to apologize to Hedy Lamarr because when I saw this I thought, okay, yeah, she's working out in her garden. This is a publicity stunt. And then when I learned about her and her war efforts and what this picture actually could have represented, which we'll talk about later, I wanted to call her up and apologize, but she's no longer alive. So I'm sorry, Hedy. Back to the dress. It has this look of a pinafore, what we would call a maxi skirt, and then it has a waistband and a pinafore with the straps. I tried to find this picture online to see if I could get more context or if there were more shots of this picture. I couldn't find any context whatsoever. So I've tried to piece together what I think this dress would have looked like and how I could possibly make it. I don't think that it's overly complicated, but I am having to take some guesses on the construction of the dress. Here's the direction that I possibly think that I should take. This has a lot of gathering at the waist where it meets the waistband. So I think this is probably more of a situation where it's a rectangle that's either 1.5 to 2 times or more the size of the waist. So you have some volume at the bottom, but then it's gathered up at the waistband. I hear my baby crying. We'll have to pick this up in a little bit, probably much later. We're getting a new roof today due to hail damage, wind damage, and the age of the roof. New roof. So there's so much noise, and I just got my baby down for a nap. I have no idea how she's sleeping through this, but I'm embracing it, rolling with it, and trying to get this done. I could wait for there not to be noise, but there's going to be noise all day, and there's always something that would keep me from doing this video or any type of project. Now, I don't know for sure what color her dress is. I'm guessing it's a floral pattern. We can see that. I'm guessing it's either a brown or a reddish brown color, because in the picture it's the same color as the dirt. What color is dirt in Hollywood, California? Let me know. That's probably what we're working with here, unless they went in and colorized the dirt and the dress to be the same color and it wasn't that way. I don't know. We're gonna roll with that. It's our guess. It's so loud. I know. I'm so sorry. Let's talk about the fabric I picked out, which is not this, because I looked and looked, could not find this. Okay, so this is the fabric I got. I wanted to find something as close as possible. Definitely wanted a floral. I probably could have found something online if I had kept digging. My initial online search did not find me anything like Hedy Lamarr's dress. So then I started looking online to see what I could find locally, because I wanted to go see the fabric in person, buy locally, even if it was from a chain store. I wanted to support people that work in my town, that have jobs in my town. And so the only floral I could find that I thought would be around a 40s type of inspired was this. Now, I know that this is not exactly 40s. This is a 2020, 2021. I don't know exactly when it was manufactured, but a 2020s fabric that I think is inspired by a 70s feel. And the 70s in a lot of ways had fabric that was inspired by the 40s. So we're like really reaching here, but I think that it has a bit of a vintage vibe that we could say is 70s inspired by 40s. Just let me have that. I know it's not identical, but I could not find anything that was quite like Hedy Lamarr's dress was. The only thing we have going for us here is they're both florals. Okay, I get it. Not identical, but we're gonna roll with it. I took my waist measurement and then I decided to cut the fabric to 1.5 times the size of my waist. And yes, I'm keeping a watch on my sneaky baby. I think I'm going to start, before I sew anything together, I'm going to start by first gathering the top of the skirt. And you can do this, there's a couple different ways. One, you can sew 2 straight stitches, 2 basting stitches at the top of your skirt, and then you will pull your threads. There's lots of YouTube tutorials. Rachel Maxey does this a lot. And then I was watching a With Wendy video, and she used a gathering foot. And I was like, stop the presses. I need to know about this. I got a gathering foot from Amazon. I got the Janome foot because I have a Janome machine. There were a couple of feet. Is that the plural of a sewing foot? I thought, let me go ahead and get what should fit my machine. So that's what we're about to see. Theoretically, you put this foot on, it gathers the material for you based on your stitch length and the tension that you set. You're really confusing the camera here, Elodie. Let's put this on and see if it works. Now I'm putting interfacing onto the waistband. I don't do this enough to remember exactly how I need to do it each time that I try to do it again. I have trouble remembering which side needs to go down and which side needs to be up, because to me they look the same and feel the same. So it always takes a little bit of trial and error for me to get it right, and I have to read the directions over and over. But I find that the pieces that need interfacing always do better when you actually put the interfacing on instead of skipping this step. That is who we lovingly refer to as Big Anna. Don't let her scare you. Sometimes when she gets moved around the house and I'm walking around the house, if I have to get up in the middle of the night and it's dark, she almost gets punched. But we love her otherwise. I have sewing the waistband together. I put the interfacing in, which the interfacing gives it a little bit more structure. I now need to pin it or clip it to the skirt. We just had dinner, so I can hear they're all singing, and we've got Mary Poppins turned on, and that's what's happening. So I'm going to start getting those pinned together. I'm very interested to see how this gathering is going, because I've got to take the whole skirt that I made bigger that then I gathered and make sure it goes evenly all around the waistband. And it did not gather as much as I wanted, but I think maybe it's worked out because I wanted more gathering, but I don't think that 1.5 times my waist measurement was enough fabric for gathering. But as I cut the fabric, I realized 3 yards, I thought 3 yards was going to be a lot. 3 yards is not as much as you think, because I also have to make the bodice and I have to make the straps. 3 yards hopefully is enough. I think I can make it work, but I'm having to be very strategic about how I cut my fabric and which direction to get everything to work. If I had pattern pieces, you could lay your pattern pieces out and know for sure, but we're just winging it here. Now I'm clipping the waistband to the skirt. And so I'm finding the middle, the center point of the waistband, and I'm going to then find the center front of the skirt, pin those together. Then I will find the end points of the waistband and the back of the skirt, pin that, and then go around making sure that I'm lining it all up so that the gathering and the waistband will, I mean, if this all makes sense, it will look uniform all the way around. I'm stopping just to make sure that my fabric is meeting up, that my seam allowance is meeting up so I don't get off track. And I can hear them dancing to Mary Poppins in there. Which, by the way, is one of the world's longest movies. I mean, not like, I don't know that that's actually a fact, but that's what it feels like. Alright, couple things, couple of disappointments. First, I feel like going and doing this straight stitch to apply the waistband to the skirt really flattened what little gathering was there. I mean, there's still some gathering, but I just think it really flattened out what little there was. Now, this gathering foot, you can gather like I did, or I can hear them laughing, or you can have the fabric you want to gather under the foot, and then in this little slit you put fabric on top that you want to attach but not gather. I could have done that. I was scared to try that and to join them in that way. I probably should have done it that way though. The other thing is, I wanted to attach the waistband before I sewed up the back of the skirt, but oh my goodness, I forgot to account for the seam allowance that's not supposed to be attached to the waist. So I either have to completely remove the waistband from the skirt, or I just need to, I'm so tired. These are things that normally I would think out ahead of time, or I know, oh, this is what I need to do and I'm in the zone. But stepping away to go change a diaper or to nurse the baby or to have dinner, like every time I step away, I get out of the zone and then I come back and it's like I kind of forget, and I've got to remember where to pick up, and I forget that, oh yeah, I was supposed to remember this, and I was supposed to remember the seam allowance, and I was supposed to remember, like, that's why I sew best when I can start a project, be in the zone, and have minimal distraction. So now I have to come up with a solution and fix it. 6 inches from the top of the skirt, bottom of the waistband down. So from here to here, 6 inches, and then add whatever width your waistband is. So I can get this up over my hips. An alternative could be that you could do elastic in the waistband. You could even do it just in the back. So the front waistband would lay flat. Then you would have elastic in the back. That's what I did in Harlow's Pinafore. We will come back to closing this up so we're not just airing out to everybody. So now at the bottom of this, I am now going to sew the skirt's sides, right sides together, all the way down to the bottom. Also would suggest pinning or clipping this together. We're gonna roll with it because I want to live life on the wild side. I have sewn them together, and I probably need to go back and do a zigzag stitch to keep this from fraying and to just make it look cleaner. Or someone could just send me a serger. Either one would be fine. Hello. It's many days later. And here is the latest on the skirt. I put it on and it was so unflattering because of course I forgot that I needed to leave an overlap on the waistband, and the skirt needed to be gathered more. So the skirt didn't need to go the width of the waistband, because when I put it on, it bunched. In order to close the back of the skirt, the whole amount of skirt gathered in the back, and it looked really bunched up, and it just was too much fabric bunched in the back. It just did not look good, so I took it apart. I took the waistband off the skirt. I used the gathering foot, which I'm still learning. I did a little bit better, but I've been watching more videos to see maybe where I'm going wrong. And so I took it off. I gathered the skirt a little bit more, and the skirt did not need to go to the ends of each end of the waistband. And so I accounted for how much extra waistband I made in comparison to my actual waist measurement. And so I sewed the skirt to my waist measurement and then had extra room for the waistband because it will overlap. It looks better. It's still, I over measured my waist. I made it too big, so I'm having to overlap it more. My thought is I'm gonna go ahead and just roll with it at this measurement. Elodie's talking to you. I'm gonna go ahead and just keep it this measurement instead of taking it in at this point. I do still have a freshly postpartum body. And so there will still be some things about my body that will change. And so I want to just give myself some time, and as those measurements change and fluctuate more, as our bodies, all of our bodies tend to do, then I will take it into what I think might be a more consistent measurement for myself. So right now I'm just going to make the piece of clothing. And it may not be the most fitted, the most precise measurements, but I'm gonna make it just out of enjoyment. And then as my body gets to maybe the size and the measurements that it's going to be, then I may better fit the skirt to that measurement, if that makes sense. I did hem it to the length that I want.
Do you think you're getting an idea yet of what it's like being in my head and jumping from task to task? Sorry if this is all over the place, but this is my life right now. So to make the bodice, I took a piece of paper and got it to the size that I wanted to basically make a pattern piece. I cut a front and a back piece and sewed the right sides together, leaving an opening at the bottom to turn it right sides out. I matched the center of the bodice to the front center of the skirt to sew those together. Then I measured the straps. I basically took the length of where the back of the skirt was up around to where I wanted it to meet at the front top of the bodice. And then I decided what width I wanted. I cut them out, sewed them right sides together, and then I've got this little tool that basically helps you pull the straps inside out. You also could just clip a safety pin and pull it through to help turn the right sides out. Once the straps are right side out, I then took this seam and made sure that it went down the center inside of the strap so you wouldn't see them, and I ironed the straps flat.
Good morning. It's a few days later because I got held up because I needed a zipper before I could move on and do anything else. I had no zippers in the house because I've never sewn a zipper before. I watched some YouTube tutorials, and I'm going to do the method where you sew the seam shut and then you either pin or clip down the zipper on top of the seam. I've sewn the seam shut with a basting stitch. I'm going to put on my zipper foot and sew the zipper on, and then we'll flip it
right side out, and I will open up the seam with a seam ripper. I hand stitched a clasp onto the waistband where it overlaps. I use my sewing machine to sew buttonholes onto the bodice, and then I hand stitch the buttons onto the straps. Now it's time to transform into Hedy Lamarr and tell you a little bit about her. Hedy Lamarr escaped Europe, leaving her first husband who worked with the Nazis. She herself was Jewish, and she hid that fact for the rest of her life. Hedy had a complicated relationship with Hollywood and the studio system. Hollywood was also to blame for drug addictions that she had to fight. They pushed drugs onto their actors to get them to keep up with their grueling schedules. Despite, and maybe because of, all that she had been through, Hedy wanted to help fight against the Nazis. She helped develop a system that would keep enemy forces from intercepting messages. She wasn't yet a U.S. citizen, but she loved America. The U.S. military, though, sadly, told her no thanks. They didn't use her patent. They told her to use her pretty face to sell war bonds. So, she did. She sold an outrageous amount. She could have thrown a fit and said no, but she made it a point to show just how much she wanted to help the war effort. This is where my first impression comes in. I saw the photo as a selfish publicity stunt. I couldn't imagine a famous actress, all dressed up, working in a garden. And by the way, I have a link in the description box that explains the history behind Victory Gardens in case you're interested. Hedy's dress is what first caught my eye, but her story is what changed my impression of this photo. Let's go back to the technology that she developed. The military later used it, and cell phone technology is what it is today because of it. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and so much more are formed on the back of her patent, and she didn't get paid for all that came from it for all of those years. She didn't even receive recognition for her patent until the end of her life. Hedy Lamarr had a very full yet very complicated life, and what I've mentioned today only scratches the surface. There are a lot of resources on her, including a documentary called Bombshell that has interviews with her children. My experience with Hedy Lamarr's story is that when we're quick to judge, those judgments might be hurting another person like they hurt Hedy, and we might be missing what's really going on and seeing the truth behind the story. So even if the garden photo was strictly for publicity, it was probably her way of using her fame to help fight the war. What started as me seeing a dress I liked and then ignorantly laughing at a caption turned to compassion and inspiration. So, finally, here is my dress inspired by Hedy Lamarr. So I just went outside, took some pictures in the rain. So if I look real dewy, that's rain. And now my hair has lost its curl because of the rain, but I had to get the pictures done. I really enjoyed making this dress. I enjoyed doing something to kind of honor Hedy Lamarr. She had a very complicated life, you cannot deny that, but she also was inspirational in a lot of the things that she did and a lot of the struggles that she faced. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. I can't wait to do something like this again, and I will see you next time. Bye. Be sure to head over to my Instagram page, Marla Plain and Small, to see what I do with the leftover dress fabric.